Hi, guys. Hope all of us are keeping ourselves healthy, fit, and taking all the precautions during these times, which are so difficult and unprecedented for the last few days. I'm here to share with you something which I was just going through today and it caught my eye. There's this particular research on the origin of this whole coronavirus thing. Um, and it is so interesting, like beyond, our whole thing of how many cases and what exactly is happening in the world. If we just look into how this whole thing started, it was so amazing. This particular lady, her name is Shi Zengli. She's known as the Chinese bat woman because of her extensive research for bats, not for any other reason. um, she was one of the first researchers in the world to come up with this connection between bats and all the current pandemics that we are seeing in the world. Shi Zengli, this whole SARS incident which happened, the severe acute respiratory syndrome which took place in the year 2002. I just have my notes written down and I'm just looking into them for some clarifications, which killed around 8,000, which in fact rather infected around 8,000 people and killed around 800 people. The whole SARS infection was initially thought to be from the civet cat. I mean, research was done mainly by the teams in Hong Kong, and they came out with the hypothesis that the civet cat was responsible for the SARS incident. And it took this lady to actually start suspecting that no, I don't think it is the civet cat, because the first link that she saw was the places where the SARS was happening. Around that, there was a lot of tropical bat caves, and a lot of species of bats used to be living in those caves. And she felt that there can be a relationship or an association between the bats and the disease itself. So from there, in the next year, that's in the year 2004, she went into this research for into the caves to identify, isolate, and find out evidence of whether the bat could actually be carrying the virus. It was very, very hard work. These people used to put up the nets in the evening before the dusk would settle down and the bats would come out for their hunting. And they would trap these bats, and then they will take the samples of blood and saliva and feces, and then they'll go into the caves to collect the bat droppings. And they spent 8 months hunting down these bats in the different caves near, Guangdong and even in Yanning. And yet they could not get a single break about how there was an association with the bats and the virus. It was only when a particular research laboratory gave them a specific antibody which they had isolated and said, look for this antibody in your research, that they got their first break, when they discovered that certain bats in those areas I mean in the areas of Guangdong, were able to were isolated with carrying the antibodies. The bats were carrying those antibodies to the coronavirus. Officially, the greatest break for them came in a cave known as the Shitao Cave, which is very close to the capital of Yunnan, where Zengli discovered that thousands of these bat-borne coronavirus species, thousands of these virus species, imagine, not one virus, thousands of these virus species were found in inhabiting one or two particular caves. It means that these bat caves were actually the melting pot of so many types of viruses, all of them belonging to the coronavirus strain, but little bit of different genetic material. It was after that they went on to discover that the MERS, which is the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome in 2012, the Ebola virus, which took place in 2014, all of these had a relationship with more than 95% genetic material similar to the initial coronavirus, which they identified in the Shitao cave, and concluded that the initial SARS was also because of an origin from bats. So basically, two things here. Even before that, when the Hendra virus took place in Australia in 1994, in Malaysia, the Nipah virus from pigs, and then the SARS, which is the swine acute diarrhea syndrome, wiped out 25,000 pigs at Guangdong overnight. All this was identified with the coronavirus strain. So coronavirus has two things. Even today, you got the news a few days back that pangolins, which was being smuggled, has been carrying the coronavirus strain also. So, this whole wildlife trade and the natural inhabitants of these caves, the bats, and from there to human, this transmission has been now an established fact. And it is amazing how researchers spend so much time and dedication to isolate this out. I would like to talk about this more in my subsequent videos about exactly what are the lessons we need to learn from this, but I just thought I'll share this story. Thank you. Good night.